through a couple quick slides, and then we can focus on the demo session after. So I think the fun part will be able to actually get live up in the platform and kind of show you some concrete examples of how Sumo Logic can be utilized. Specifically, we'll focus around PCI compliance for the demo session, but we'll focus on a couple of broader use cases as a kind of level set and give you a sense of kind of how you can best utilize the platform, as I mentioned. So cool. So let me just fire up a couple slides really quick, and then we can we can spend some time in the platform shortly thereafter. So cool. So as I mentioned, we're going to focus today around specifically the continuous intelligence platform for compliance. There are also scenarios where the Cloud SIEM can be utilized for compliance as well, which my colleague Dana Torgerson will touch on some of those examples in future sessions. But for today, we're going to focus on audit and compliance, and specifically determining compliance and posture management. Tomorrow's session, sort of same times, and you're welcome to register for both, will be focused around cloud security monitoring and analytics. So really about monitoring, detecting, searching, investigating these various security incidents. Then Cloud SIEM, Cloud SOAR, as a larger part of our security solutions portfolio, really focus around the automation of triaging alerts, detecting threats, being able to perform deeper investigations with the Cloud SIEM product. And then Cloud SOAR really around the orchestration and automation piece for the product. So just some quick kind of higher level kind of facts about the platform itself. So we have over 100,000 active users that are using the platform on a daily basis. I think we're up to 1.7 exabytes of data being analyzed every single day, and quadrillions of records that are analyzed on a daily basis, and about 2,300 customers that utilize the platform today. This is a kind of a quick hit mention of some of the customers that use the platform in sort of a similar fashion that we'll kind of walk through today, including New York Life, AB InBev, Alliance, and quite a few others, but just want to highlight some kind of high level summaries on that regard. So compliance challenges that we commonly hear from a lot of our customers are really around lack of cloud support. So really the current approach, just not scaling to handle these various cloud workloads, really slow cycles for compliance readiness, and the time consuming nature of product deployment and tuning, and how the actual development of the product coordinates back with these various compliance efforts. And then just a lot of complexity, having to navigate across many different tools in order to get to where you need to go, as far as better understanding audit requirements for audit teams internally and externally. And then expensive solutions with these really fixed licensing models that are very misaligned with your business. We offer a lot of flexibility as far as being able to tune to what the specific requirements are for your given use cases, and being able to actually be flexible all throughout the year and not feel locked into a specific piece of the puzzle as far as the contracts go themselves. Our solution itself is very much a cloud native data monitoring solution. You can see a lot of the sources that we're able to bring in here. We'll get into kind of the granularity of how you actually are able to analyze each of these data sources. But as we think about applications, servers, workstations, and OS, all of these things really help you to navigate or better understand all of your infrastructure and not have any kind of blind spots that would come with that. And as I mentioned, as we look at some of the broader data source categories of on-premise, multi-cloud, internal SaaS IT, such as Zoom, for example, or external apps that you're actually building for your customers. And then really being able to ingest all of that data in and say, okay, how do we perform the best security monitoring to have kind of that broader overview, which we'll look at in a couple dashboards for examples, and then security analytics, really getting a lot more granular and use case specific at the query level, and actually tuning into what that kind of needle in the haystack is that you want to really focus on. And then the level of granularity that we allow you to get down to for the analysis is really being able to pivot out over device, IPs, networks, databases, etc. So we'll get into a couple examples of that. Sumo itself is very much, as a platform, as a company, we're focused very much on protecting our customer data, which would be your data that is on behalf of your customers as well. This is just a quick hit list of kind of where things sit today. So PCI 3.2 service provider level 1 certified, SOC 2 type 2 attestation, ISO 27001 certified. The list goes on all the way down to, we have it in kind of in bold here, FedRAMP authorization for moderate impact. Many of our customers do have kind of government data that they're working in with really closely. So that really allows them to really focus in and have that as an option, and be able to feel more confident that the data is very secure and compliant with your requirements, depending on what your business needs are. And I think some of those kind of key advantages that we touched on, so we kind of touched on some of the key challenges, but the ability to really bring in all of these many types of cloud native data, all of the rapid compliance readiness that comes out of the box, including what we'll look at today, ease of use and flexibility to really be able to tailor the platform to what your needs are. And then just that flexibility of pricing, where, as we mentioned, there are really 4 core solutions for the security portfolio. So you have the option to basically decide and tune where you kind of attach the credits that you want to put to best use in a given quarter, month, day for your business, and really kind of tune it according to that. So just a quick overview of kind of, probably if you're on this call and you're focused on compliance needs within your organization, you're probably already pretty familiar, I would say, with the 12 PCI requirements, which really focused around sort of firewall configuration, protection of stored data, cardholder data, securing all of your systems and applications, even gets into physical access requirements, as well as testing security systems and processes, and all of the policy that overarches all of these. So I'd say, we'll touch on basically all 12. I mean, maintaining policy at that point, that's really more setting your documentation right, and then sort of setting your organization in the right direction. That's probably the least area of focus for Sumo, right? Since we're really more focused on what do you actually do once you've decided what your policy is, how do you actually maintain that and ensure that you're able to better navigate to the right information as things kind of progress. So we're really focused primarily around 1 through 11, but we'll really touch on all 12 throughout today's session. And if you're feeling so inspired during this session, you're absolutely welcome to sign up for the free trial, which is I'll just type that into the chat as well. And that's sumologic.com/sign-up. That would actually give you the opportunity to sign up right away and just get off to the races with the actual free trial, which generally lasts 2 weeks. We can work with you on your timelines if you have a different timeline in mind. So cool, kind of a quick whirlwind backdrop, just to kind of set the stage, and we'll spend the majority of the rest of the time here on the kind of 12 PCI requirements, what it looks like out of the box within the Sumo platform, how you actually navigate to kind of accelerating your PCI compliance requirements, or just more broadly, any number of types of compliance you may be looking to ensure for your customer. So cool. So, and I do want to mention too, it looks like we have a very strong attendee list for today. So I do want to mention, absolutely feel free to pop a question into the chat or into the Q&A, and we can make sure that we can either answer it live, or if it's something better addressed towards the end of the demo, then we can do that then as well. So perfect. So I'm going to just start with kind of the overview of and this is all kind of, like I mentioned, available out of the box, out of our app catalog. So compliance and security, this would be the category that you really want to focus on. And if you just let's see. So if you just type in PCI, you'll be able to find either kind of, this is a focus on like the custom build outs for professional services, but the rest of these really are focused around Windows, Palo Alto Networks, Linux, Amazon VPC Flow, AWS CloudTrail. All 12 of the PCI compliance requirements typically would be addressed in any of this out of the box content. It's very easy. You basically just add to library, and you would just search for CloudTrail within your source category. If it comes up right away, then you should hopefully know which source is most relevant. If you'd like to capture a wider category, in this case, we could do labs slash AWS slash CloudTrail, and I would just add an asterisk at the end. And that would actually allow you to capture the entirety of all of those categories we just looked at and get the broader view. So yeah, so as I mentioned, we'll start with just this quick PCI posture overview, which gives us a sense of kind of the visual on just overall what's happening, what are the breakouts by requirements, what is the count for each of them, PCI requirement 6 versus 7, et cetera, and the counts that are attached to those. And then the incident being 14.3, we have over the last 15 minutes alone, we see over 14,000 incidents, and then the history of failures broken down by the specific PCI compliance requirement number. And then if we just jump ahead, and I probably won't have time to just kind of go through this exhaustively, so I may kind of jump ahead, but we'll start with requirement 1 here. And really the focus for requirement 1 in this case is around installation and maintenance of firewall configurations. We're actually looking at Palo Alto Networks data in this case, and we're saying what is the allowed network activity by direction, and we see largely it's outbound, which is kind of in line with what we'd expect typical activity for firewall traffic to look like. And then we see allowed network activity by transport and internet layer protocol. We see the majority are really coming in as we might expect, given that they're the most common protocol, are really coming in through UDP as well as TCP. And we see like some subtle spiking that's occurring kind of at the 9 a.m. mark, maybe closer to looks like 9:45 a.m. or so. In either of those cases, we kind of may want to drill down on that. We have the ability to set what the right time ranges are depending on what your requirements are and kind of build around that. So that covers kind of PCI compliance number 1. And as we kind of drill through these, we'll think about what are the different types of data sources that are most relevant depending on what the requirements are. So here we're looking at no use of vendor supplied defaults for passwords. And as we consider that, we have failed logins versus successful logins over the last 24 hours. We can see the ratio is really, this is actually a bit higher than I would typically see. So we're seeing it 23K against 98K. So it's kind of, roughly, let's call it 20-some% of the overall logins are really failed attempts, which to us is probably a pretty good indicator that we want to drill down, better understand who is performing those failed logins, who may be responsible for that. And we can actually say, like in the case of destination host, we can figure out which device might be most responsible for that. So in this case, if we look at Duke's MacBook Pro, whoops, I just exited the window there. So if I just go back to the filter to make sure we're on Duke's MacBook Pro, we actually see a pretty, we'll let the data load, but we see a pretty similar ratio. It's actually looking a little bit more like there's a higher number of failed logins for Duke's MacBook Pro than probably the ratio for other devices. So we just start to kind of run the stats in our head, but also we can apply stacked bar charts here to actually better understand those visuals depending on what those requirements are. So it's a little bit of a look behind the scenes of how you would kind of tackle this particular. I'm just kind of I'm getting specific here and thinking about as you think about a particular requirement for a piece or for any compliance requirement, really. What does it look like to actually utilize Sumo Logic to improve your compliance posture, stay on top of it, but also when kind of audit season comes around, how do you know that you have the right data available to you? And this is kind of the way in which you would perform that. We're jumping ahead to requirement 4 because requirement 3 is really focused around protection of stored data, which in of itself is really more referencing the fact that Sumo Logic stores your data on your behalf. And we have tons of documentation we can point you to, but these are the core compliance requirements that align with that. So that's why we're skipping to requirement 4 here, which is really about encryption of transmission of cardholder data. And how do you actually track where the insecure allowed traffic is, again, broken down by protocol, insecure allowed traffic broken down by target port. The unencrypted ports probably would be the most interesting panel of all for understanding encrypted transmission of cardholder data, because here we can say, okay, based on the fact that we see port 80, and in line with the fact that it is the most common port given that it's public alongside 8080, we see that it's the majority of the unencrypted traffic is public, which probably is cause for less concern because we expect public traffic to be a little bit less likely to be encrypted all the time, given that we're interacting with sort of the public infrastructure, public internet. But that being said, we see port 21, 23, 513. We see a lot of others that we may want to kind of follow up on and have better understanding of. And that's where kind of the slicing and dicing of the data and actually, navigating or setting the right filters based on what those requirements are would be helpful. And you can actually tune the query that underpins that panel as necessary. If we jump ahead to protection of all systems against malware for requirement 5, here's where we're really thinking about how much malware is actually being detected, and even all the way down to the file level, the user level, app level, and the various kind of pie charts that are associated with each of these. You can absolutely tune the visuals based on what your requirements are. But in this case, we see actually higher level of severity is responsible for the majority of the counts of malware that we're seeing over the last 24 hours. And so this is cause for concern because this malware by severity is based on kind of a cross-section of data that we have that underpins these queries. That higher level of severity is likely indicating to us that this is something that does require follow-up, something that is going to need to be, you're going to need to dig into and better understand why that particular type of malware, such as gen.ransom.encrypted.file.ns, attached to this user of test user at AuxLife. In this case, it's probably a test account or test instance that maybe a penetration tester is using, but and it is at the high severity level. But like I said, this may be expected behavior. This may be something you want to drill down on. Depending, you can always set filters accordingly to align with what those requirements are. So cool. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit to requirement 10 so that we can look at a little bit of a contrast of saying what are the failed API calls and the console root login failures that we're seeing coming into the system. Based on that, what are we most concerned with in terms of successes versus failures? Again, we're looking for kind of these ratios, and then we're also looking for ways in which we can kind of pivot out, better understand which event names are attached or most likely to align with which destination users, or maybe more importantly, the source IP, so that we can start to, again, build kind of these pivot points and better understand, once we have that, we can say based on that source IP, if we just select the second on the list here, for a quick example, we see a lot of the failed API calls are really responsible via this 10.0.1.132.100 IP, and that indicates to us we really want to dig in, better understand, but at the same time, we don't see any successful logins. So this is a likely culprit of an IP that we may want to dig into and have more understanding of what may be causing those issues or those failed API calls in particular. And it may just be a misconfiguration, or that it's simply maybe a DevOps challenge around how reliability issues. But if it is truly a security concern, that is certainly something you would want to button up as far as thinking about as you cycle in, and always ensure that you have those compliance requirements that are being made, that you're actually aligning really well with those, and that you have all of those things covered all the way down to the deeper technical level, so that the documentation that aligns back with compliance is all kind of tracking, and it's all in line. So I'll end with kind of two quick dashboards. So maintaining policy we covered is from the outset, your policy really will be designed probably in documentation itself. But Sumo itself can also, on a meta level, you could use that to track policy changes that you're seeing coming into your system. So you're seeing S3 bucket policy changes, recent policy changes, et cetera. Through those, you can actually see the changes over time in alignment with how your team structure might be for your security and compliance team, making sure that all of those changes at the technical level, as opposed to the purely documentation level, are aligning with how you expect your infrastructure to behave. And then I do want to just touch on kind of, since we spent most of the time in kind of quote unquote, the original style dashboard, I do want to just touch on our new style dashboard as well. which I can actually pull up a better example where we can talk about scenarios where essentially you can combine metrics and queries into one dashboard. I'm just going to use a CloudTrail example, but we could actually tack on a panel here. And also we get the Sparkline visualization. So with a new style dashboard, you can just see some slightly different approaches. These are referred to as template variables within the scope of the new dashboard. So just a little bit different approach to how we handle the filtering. Um, but I do want to just call that out because we spent more of our time kind of in the quote unquote old style dashboard, but it is helpful to look at kind of some of the UX updates that we push through all throughout the app catalog. Anything new that comes out in the app catalog is always going to be covered in is always going to be built in the new style of dashboard. So all of these here, including cloud security monitoring for Security Hub, Guard Duty, Windows, etc., are all utilizing that kind of that feature list that I just mentioned. So in line with all that, I think I'm actually going to call it here since we got about 2 minutes until we're calling it. So I do want to I'll kind of just stay on mute for the tail end of it in case there are any questions that come through at the end here. Absolutely feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to go over time as needed. As I mentioned, you're welcome to sign up for the free trial if you'd like to get started and actually kind of get up and live in the platform. So I'll just kind of go on mute here in case there are any questions, but otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to get to know the Sumo product a little bit better today. And looking forward to tomorrow's session as well, which is focused around cloud security monitoring and analytics. Thank you so much.